What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. Take three of this intro. Take three. My name is Chris, and I am joined by only one titan of the industry this week. The other one, Dame, is taking PTO. He's exercising his PTO, and he is in Puerto Rico right now, just doing whatever he is doing. I hope he's doing well. But I got the more important member this week, Jurg. How are you? I know it's been a while. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, just work getting in the way, life getting in the way. But how are you, pal?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I wish I had Dame's unlimited PTO that he has. I got to find a way to get that one of these days. I need some equity built up more here on SS. But now, brother, I'm doing fine. Like you mentioned, work just gets in the way, but I'm always happy. Per usual, we discussed this in the previous takes as well. It's funny, but ladies and gentlemen, we are close to the exact date. I think we might surpass it by next episode, or maybe if by luck we recorded on the exact date. But 3 years ago, this podcast started during the pandemic, in the thick of things, when people were playing Warzone and having times with friends. As people have probably seen the meme of what it was like to
Yeah.
play with the boys during the pandemic. But it's a similar thing here. 3 years during the pandemic, we started this, Chris, and I said this pre-show, and I know I've told you and Dane this multiple times, but I cannot say this enough. No matter what the numbers are, no matter how many people listen to us, this is, to me, objectively, the funnest and best sports podcast out there, where we have plenty of facts and we try to be as detailed and analytical and fun as we can, or factual as we can. But we love having fun, and if I could podcast with two people for the rest of my life, it would be you two, for sure, because you guys are just the best bunch of lads that anyone could ask for.
Too much praise, way too much praise, Jurg, way too much. But we sentiments shared towards you as well. Don't you forget that. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 3 years, man. Jesus Christ, holy shit! Like LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards have been in the league for that long already. My God, I mean, doesn't feel like it. Doesn't feel like it. But yeah, a bunch of sports to talk about because we've been gone for a few weeks. The NBA season started. We're already halfway done with the NFL season. The World Series just finished. Just a bunch of things to talk about. But a bunch of things to talk about. But we're gonna keep it loose. We're gonna have like a little bit of a free for all episode, a lazy river episode, as Jurg calls it, because of the Dan Lebitard show. They do the same
Yep.
thing. So that's what we're gonna do here. I know Dame's not here, and I know you and Dame usually handle the baseball stuff, but the Texas Rangers did defeat the Arizona Diamondbacks 4-1, and the Texas Rangers are now world champions of the MLB. I was rooting for the Diamondbacks. I was hyped that the Diamondbacks made it, but it's one of those, situations where you kind of know that the other team's kind of like the overwhelming favorite. I think they could have, if they took game one, because they were up two, I think in the ninth inning or in the eighth inning. But if they took game one, I think it would have been, I think the series could have been up in the air, to be honest. I think they would have had more of a shot, of course. I mean, they still would have been playing, but I was rooting for the Diamondbacks. Sucks that they lost, but it's great that they got there. Jurg, what did you make of this World Series? Dame was just pissed beyond belief because it was boring. It's just it's Diamondbacks versus Rangers isn't fun to watch. But in that, we get a star emerging in Corey Seager. I think the ratings were the lowest it's been in years for a World Series, which it
Yeah.
sucks. But also, I do think that says more about the flaws of the MLB's marketing abilities.
Oh yeah.
Personally, I mean, that could be another discussion. But what'd you make of the whole World Series matchup? And also, would you make of the fact that the ratings were kind of low as well? I mean, Dame's not here, but I'm pretty sure he'd be a little bit more pessimistic.
Right. I think part of it is, like you said, with how MLB does it. And as a fan of another league that struggles with marketing, trust me, I understand baseball fans, but I think a big portion of it, with not just this series. I mean, I don't know what the numbers of the AL and NLCS were. I mean, both those went to 7, so maybe it's higher than all the rest of it. But I think part of it is just there were a lot of blowouts this postseason, man. And a lot of these series that ended quickly had a lot of games that were just not close. The Rangers, look at their run. They dominated the Tampa Bay Rays in their quick wild card series. They dominated the Orioles. They went back and forth with Houston. And then let's be real here, they kind of dominated Arizona for the most part. And Arizona was the one closer to having competitive games and series here and there. But even them, they only let the Dodgers get 6 runs in their NLDS series, man. There were a lot of blowouts in this postseason, and even these 2 series that went to 7. There were times where the Rangers just outclassed the Astros, and I think there was one game where the Astros outclassed them. Whereas in the other series, the Diamondbacks kind of really roughshotted the Phillies in the last 5 games of the series, whereas the Phillies destroyed them in the first 2. So I think that has to play a role in it. when it's not as competitive consistently in a 7 game series, we can kind of get skewed to what our memory is, right? Like, yes, the AL and NLCS both went to 7, but those series like were kind of not close. Like in Houston and Texas, the big game was, I think, the game 5 between them, if I'm not mistaken, where Altuve hit his late home run.
Hmm.
At least I'm pretty sure that was game 5. Aside from that, the Rangers just kind of ran away with the rest of the series, like when they were winning games. And I think you need balanced competitive play in a series and in games to really get the excitement. And I think that's the thing for what we want to say about the MLB postseason. And I think the thing with Rangers Diamondbacks is, like, yes, on paper there was not a lot of quote unquote interest, and I know the ratings will reflect that. But I gotta appreciate two teams that 2 seasons ago, Chris, had 100+ losses each.
Yep.
These were two of the worst teams in the league in 2021. And now 2 years later, 2023, they both make the World Series. They both kind of make surprise runs. They both beat former world champions in the process of this run. Man, that's phenomenal, to say the very least. So I think ultimately, yes, there is an argument to be had, and I think it's not just with baseball, with the postseason. Like, we kind of had the discussion a couple weeks back in terms of, is there a new thing that baseball needs to try to fix when it comes to the postseason? That again could maybe bring up some more discourse later in the offseason when we have some free time, right? Um, but the regular season is just so long. How do they make it matter? I think it's a very difficult thing to hold people in 162 games. And I think just some of it, bro, at the end of the day, is scheduling. Like, the Tampa Bay Rays playoff games were played at like 3 in the afternoon in freaking Tampa, Florida, where that stadium isn't necessarily the easiest to get to right now because it's still Tropicana. And like, kids are in school. Kids just started school. People are at work. Why are you doing the game at 3 p.m. in the freaking afternoon? I don't even think most unemployed people like were going to those games. Like, so I and again, the NHL suffers from some of this too. I feel you, baseball fans, but it's it's a problem. Baseball needs to try to figure out a way with things, and it's like, it's not an easy thing. This is something like I would even joke at my job if this was more to deal with my work, but like way above my pay grade. This is one of the things where it's like, if you're the commissioners, if you're the brain trust of that league, you need to figure out, because as much money as you're going to get, it's kind of like ratings at some point have to matter, right? Like, I know it's a bit of a skewed thing because just sports in general right now is such a valuable commodity. You see what these TV contracts are,
And
Chris, and
streaming too.
streaming. You see what these franchises get valued at, bro. Sports will always be a profitable business. Let me say that up front. Sports will always be profitable, but the viewership, I think this year, it should ring some bells to the MLB. Like, hey, you fixed a couple things here and there in terms of the game, right? With the pitch clock and at bat clocks and stuff. I think there's a couple other like little things you could do to fix stuff, like with the banning the shift and everything that they also did. But you got to figure out the postseason. Like normally it's the postseason that outperforms the regular season. This year, this World Series, it was tough. And I know at the end of the day, it's because it wasn't two marquee teams. I think, like you said, Chris, marketing, storyline wise, what other sport, like, this is like in the NBA, if next year's NBA Finals was going to be between like the Pistons and the Rockets. That's basically what this was. This was two of the worst teams in baseball.
Damn.
Make It was two of the worst teams in baseball. 2 years later, they make the World Series. This is phenomenal. And you mentioned Corey Seager becoming a star, one of now 4 players to win 2 World Series MVP awards. Adolis Garcia became a stud in the ALCS,
Yeah.
right? Like
By the
this,
way, if
yeah,
I saw Corey Seager at Queens Center Mall, I wouldn't recognize him, to
yeah.
be honest.
That's the big thing. Like, you gotta find a way. And I think a part of that, Chris, I think it's not just an MLB problem. I think it's a baseball problem. And again, this is funny because despite the fact the regular seasons in hockey and basketball are so intertwined, I think some of the issues between hockey and baseball make them so intertwined. Whereas, like, Chris knows some of the names I've spoken about. But if I were to tell Chris, if me and Chris were walking at Queen Center Mall and by chance Connor McDavid somehow walked by us, I would notice. It's 50-50 shot, I think, if Chris would notice. Like, there is a marketing problem that I think starts with the fact that at such a young age, these kids are forced to think always about team and not showing any emotion. And if they show emotion, someone's gonna beam them in the head on the next at bat. There are some cultural things in baseball that need to be phased out of the game. Uh, Not all of this unwritten rule thing. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Unwritten rules. It's the dumbest thing. And I think there's a lot of things that baseball still needs to fix structurally and I think culturally for it to keep taking steps. It just so happens that they had a poorly rated World Series this year to go alongside that. And a baseball playoffs that, I'm be real with you, there were moments, but overall it was kind of honestly. And I hate to say that, I really do, but like, I've been texting you, Chris, baseball's kind of fallen out for me. F1 is like my new fourth
Mm-hmm.
sport in my lexicon, right? Like I'm gonna watch one of the Grand Prix before I was gonna watch a playoff game this year. And will that change in following years? I don't know, but you at least gotta make me think about the decision, right? Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I didn't even know when the baseball playoffs started. I didn't even know they were on. I was like, holy shit! Like we're about to finish the wild card round, and I'm like, wait, what? When did this start? So, I
We have to
mean,
tell you. That was the funny
yeah,
part.
yeah. I mean, look, I'm a casual when it comes to baseball, but not a good thing. Not a good thing. But I mean, like, yeah, like the matchup wasn't a matchup that everyone wanted. But like, what do you want me to do? I cannot fault the Rangers and the Diamondbacks for them beating the two favorites, right? Like the Diamondbacks like came back against the Phillies. Phillies had all the momentum, insane crowd, and then of course the Rangers beat the Astros. You know how hard it is to beat the Astros? It's like it's a weird spot. You're kind of in a gray area because like yeah, maybe it's a matchup some people don't want, but it's just like I mean they got the job done, and maybe this is good for the future because like names start to become legitimate names because of the platform they're on right now. So yeah, I mean, I just know Dame would have been vehemently nihilistic about the playoff matchup. But yeah, that's baseball talk. NBA, the NBA season has started. Jurg, I gotta tell you, I am. I don't know what it is. I have zero idea what it is. There's a part of me that is just like, whatever. Like the NBA.
Ugh.
Usually, I'm very excited when the NBA season starts, right?
Mhm.
And granted, as a Knicks fan, it's a little bit better that the Knicks have been better as of late, recently, the last few years. But for some reason, man, this season, not just the Knicks, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just not excited about basketball right now. I don't know what it is. I really don't because I do think there's a little bit more parity this year. Um, Several storylines to talk about. I mean, we're like what 5 games in, and a bunch of overreactions have occurred. You know, some not warranted, some rightfully so, just because of the state teams we're at, and just the predictability of where you think teams may go direction wise. But yeah, I mean, look, from what I've seen so far, the Denver Nuggets are the Denver Nuggets, the reigning champs. You know, they still look like the team to beat in the West. The Mavericks look really good. I'm gonna be all
Yep.
over the place with this, by the way. And then of course you could just rebound off what I say
Lazy
here.
River,
But
Chris. We got
yeah,
this.
Lazy River, Dallas Mavericks look really freaking good, and
Luka's
we did
averaging
put
almost a triple double.
I mean, the sun is hot, right? Just a normal Tuesday for him. I think I'm the only one that had the Mavericks kind of high. I have them third place. I believe you and Dame might have had them fifth, sixth, or seventh. I got to tell you, man, like I don't want the Mavericks to succeed, but when I looked at their offseason, I was like, they've made some decent moves. They re-signed Kyrie Irving. I mean, it's we have our feelings about Kyrie, but like he's a star that you have to put next to Luca, and I think it's a seamless fit. I really do. I just think Luca needed a guy because he can't do this shit by himself. We've seen him; he could take your team to to the Western Conference Finals. To be honest, but like you can't go past that because of heliocentric ball and the toll it takes on you physically and mentally. So I think Kyrie Irving is a perfect fit to him, and I think Kyrie will defer. To be honest, they look
Yeah.
good. I like the Grant Williams addition as well. Derek Lively Jr. looks like a beast.
They
Um,
finally have a big man who can jump more than 2 feet in the air.
Yeah, bro, it's I don't know. I'm very bullish on the Mavs, and I hate it, but they're 4-0 right now. I think they're 4-0, right? But either they're 4-0 or like they've lost
4
one
0,
game.
4
But
0, 4 0.
yeah, 4-0. The Suns, look on paper. I think semifinals minimum. Minimum. We've talked about this in previous episodes because just the talent on that roster. They're deep, dude. They've those within the margin moves they made to fill out the bench really good because I think Eric Gordon was a good addition for them. Um, I think Nurkic is the perfect fit for them. He is going to be he's doing wonders for them more so than Aiden would have done. And Aiden's looking like dog meat in Portland, by the way. But I'm kind of concerned about the injuries now. NBA, I mean, there was a whole resting policy about like fines and all that shit. I'll say this: they don't give two shits. Teams are resting players 5 games into the season. I still
Yep.
can't believe this shit is happening. Adam Silver's league, man, they don't care about him. They don't respect that man. And to be honest, I don't blame him. He is such a fucking, I don't know. Adam Silver is such a loser to me. He is just, he always, he, he's gotten praise in the past and rightfully so the way he handles things. But I do think the player empowerment era has gone on way too far. and it's kind of like beyond reach at this point. Like you can't do much about it. They don't care, bro. They're gonna rest if they're feeling fatigued or whatnot. But
And they tried in these past negotiations, and honestly, Chris, I forget how often I really mentioned it during the pod. I thought the owners were going to try to slam the players during the negotiations. I thought they were going to be tough with them because of everything that's happened. I thought there was going to be some more strict things, and it's just a couple of like things with the tax bracket, and like you said, this rule. But even with this whole trying to stop resting players thing, there are certain players that can qualify for being exempt because they've played a certain amount of minutes, and it's only like a very select few, like LeBron, KD, Steph, guys like that. And how many of those guys are really in the league anymore uh, for that? So, like you mentioned, the NBA tried to do something about this. They they couldn't really. They didn't succeed.
it's
They didn't
over,
really
bro.
succeed.
I don't know. I don't think they care at this point. I really don't. I just think that's the state of the NBA going forward. In terms of the Suns, like I don't know, man. Like Booker's been out with like a toe slash ankle injury. I think he's gonna be back soon. Bradley Beal's been nursing a back injury with no timetable, and that's concerning to me. I think I think Booker has just been kind of like, they're being cautious with him, but I don't know, man. The Bradley Beal back injury is kind of a mystery to me, and that's not good at all. Because I've seen like a video of him shooting recently. This is after the back injury was announced. Did not look good. Um, it was very like I don't know, like just the his posture wasn't right when shooting, and I'm like, oh, this could like kind of fuck them up in the going forward. And the issue is when like two of your top three players are like kind of out early, Kevin Durant has to carry the load a lot more, and physically he just that might not be good for him later in the season. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's that the Suns are gonna be. I mean, on paper we expect them to go far, but for me, it's always just gonna be health and just vibes. But I again, like we weren't completely sold on them when they made the trade, but I mean they look good though. They look at Kevin Durant still could do Kevin Durant things. He's not the same as he once was, but I mean the Suns. I mean I'll worry about them later. But right now, not the best vibes I'm getting. Just the Bradley Beal thing is a little sick. But once Devin Booker comes back, I think they'll be all right at least. Just a band aid temporarily.
Yeah, they need their big three together. Like I'll give the Suns credit; they did a good job later in the offseason of building up that bench that they just did not have once they made that trade. They did a better job at that, but this is still a team that needs at least two of their three stars playing every single night, and that's part of the reason. Like you mentioned, our preseason standings and stuff that will be there for the beautiful people at SomewhatSports. I had the Suns high up because I thought this new rule was going to play more of an impact than I did. We made these picks before the season started. 5 games in, I feel like there's egg in my face because it's like, oh, they found a way to go past this kind of. And Bradley Beal, I get the injury thing more. Are you starting to, the last thing with the Suns here, bro? Are you starting to get a little bit concerned with Devin Booker because he missed literally half of last season? He only played in 41 games. And my thing is like, oh, D Book's going to come back. He's going to play, of course, way more than that this season. But now he's dealing with this stuff early on. Aside from drinking the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving juice of missing games at random intervals of time, like how much do you think this is going to affect the Suns here? Because like if
You
D
know what
Book
it
is
is,
starting to have
bro?
these problems, this is not good.
I think because I noticed this with the Nets, and I do think it's this theory of just that they I think that Devin Booker isn't as hurt as they say. The thing is with mostly Kevin Durant teams, I've noticed this when the talent level is so high. I think exclude the Warriors because the Warriors actually have like a decent fundamental structure in that organization. With the Nets and like the Suns, they're just like, you know what? We don't need chemistry. We don't need to be all like playing the same amount of games together. The talent will supersede everything else. You know, that's what they think, right? They think they don't like their star players don't need to play all these games. It hasn't worked so far, but that's just the nature of like Kevin Durant teams. It's like, bro, fuck it, we're just gonna go all vibes because we have the talent to do it. But I don't know, man. It doesn't like the data doesn't like really back up your claim. I just think him and Booker they just want to hoop, bro. And I just think the way they handle stuff, I just don't think it's good like chemistry wise. I just don't think it's good for like to like kind of gain momentum for a team. It's just too stop start for the Suns. But hey, I don't care. This is how it is, bro. Like he's not a coachable dude. I think he'll do what like you tell him to do, but also I just think he wants to hoop, and I just think the Suns are just like screw it. We have the talent to kind of look past what we should do at like what a normal team would do because just we have Kevin Durant and we have Devin Booker and we have Bradley Beal. So I don't know, man. They're weird. They're weird. Kevin Durant teams are weird to me, but if they don't win this year, oof, can't wait for that. Lakers, I mean, they are how I expect them to look. Uh, LeBron, I think, is gonna have to do a lot of carrying, man. Clearly he has the physical wherewithal to do it because that man is a machine. Guys, I get it. I get it. I mean, it's just
You're
he
21.
yeah, I get it. It's year 21. What he's doing is unreal. It's the same thing with the Vince McMahon meme that we've been seeing lately. I've been seeing that tweet and I've been seeing that meme too much. I
Right.
understand it's unreal, guys. Let's just keep watching though. Why does everyone need to tell me this? And it's always LeBron fans, but this is why I can never appreciate greatness, man. Just
It's
everyone just
every
always
play, every game.
I'm like, I got it. Stop breathing down my neck, bro. Like I'm not an idiot. I'm a clown, but I'm not an idiot. I could see, what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, they're for me, it's always going to be about health, and it's just they're going to have to rely on their young players a lot. The Cam Reddishes, the Rui Hachimuras, the D'Angelo Russells, the Jackson Hayes, the Jared Vanderbilts of the world.
Gabe
LeBron and
Vincent.
AD will do what they do best, but I do think they're going to have to kind of rely on their younger guys to like kind of, you know, I mean, you're not going to expect like a leap from all of them, but they just kind of have to be solid, right? Because I mean, it's going to take a toll. If LeBron and AD have to do this much carrying, like they did against the Clippers last night, the young guys actually did some decent plays, like defensively with Cam Reddish. But you're going to need that so that LeBron doesn't burn out by the end.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Clippers afterwards. Because in terms of like other West teams, no one really stands out to me. I do want to say okay, these are two teams I want to talk about in the Clippers.
Right.
OKC looks really good, man. I'm
Yep.
very happy OKC looks good. I think they're gonna go all in now. We're done with tanking. We're
Yep.
done with tanking. I think they have enough solid young talent,
They have a great
and
young
one of
core.
them is an all star and shy that they could just kind of play now. You don't play to lose. And what are they like 4-1 now?
I
They're
think
three and
so.
two.
Yeah.
They're 3-2. Excuse me. They're 3-2. Him, Shy, Chet, Giddy, Lou Dort. I think they have a solid core, man. And this team, I think they can make the playoffs. Not the play in, the playoffs. If Chet could like kind of stay healthy, they're a problem for everyone. OKC was never a bad team to me. They just lost on purpose, which I kind of understood. But now you have the core is in place now. Go for it now. By go for it, I means like make the playoffs at the least at this point. They have the structure to do it. I like their head coach. They just play so hard, man. I'm a big OKC guy. The Presties had some little sus antics with like the intentional
Yeah.
tanking. I know a lot of teams have done that, but he's just so apparent with it. But they look good, man. I actually hope I love when like new teams kind of emerge, and they've done it.
And new faces.
Yeah, yeah, and they have some likable talent. They have some likable young talent. Spurs, man, it's crazy to me, bro. How like if you saw, I don't know if you saw the game against the Mavericks, the first game of the season for them.
Right.
That organization looks so rejuvenated now. And rightfully so. You have a generational talent, but it's crazy, bro.
Pop looks
It's
5 years younger.
yeah, yeah, and he acts 5 years younger. But the Victor, I think, has like rejuvenated that organization, and I think they have the pieces, the perfect complementary pieces for him. Because I think Devin Vassell is going to emerge as a star. I like Keldon Johnson. I think Zach Collins, for as much of a herb as he is a decent fit next to Wembanyama. He could do all the dirty work. They need a point guard still. I know Jeremy Sochan. I don't know how to say his last name. Sochan. They kind of rotate with like the playmaking duties, but I do think eventually you're gonna need to start Trey Jones. But Wembanyama looks great. Looks great. He's still adjusting to like NBA defense and like the fouls are a little bit of an issue, but the Spurs, they're on track to where I thought they would be. I think the Spurs and the Thunder, coincidentally, Chad Victor, that archetype, those two teams, best look out for them because I think one of them could do damage early, and I think it's the Thunder as of right now. But man, I hope this becomes a rivalry going forward. But yeah, Jerk, what'd you make of those two teams? Did I bring up another team that?
Those two, Thunder Spurs. Chris, I'm with you. These are the definitions of teams building young cores right and figuring it out. Not like what some teams try to do, Houston. But I think the thing that with these two teams, like you said, man, it's rejuvenation, it's energy, it's guys finally being in the lineup in the case of OKC. And man, it's getting that one prospect that you need. Hey, man, a number one overall pick can accelerate your rebuild. Uh, Because here's the thing, Chris, and I think we throw around the world rebuild so many times. I think we need to start to use different terms, or at least be in proper phases. There's the teardown phase of the rebuild. There's the actual building, right? Getting the young assets, etc., young talent, and there's finally taking the final steps to completing it. And not necessarily like completing a rebuild is not always winning a championship. It's becoming a comfortable playoff team again, which for the Spurs, we know 2+ decades of pure excellence. Literally, our entire lives have been the San Antonio Spurs being in the playoffs up until just the last couple of years.
Spurs have been very low key in their rebuild phase. Maybe it's
Yep.
because no one pays attention, but they've been very low key with it. I've noticed it. But go ahead.
And it's all the development. And it's guys that we've seen and we've even talked about, and some even drafted the last couple of years. Devin Vassell, who I think was part of one of the mock drafts we've done. Keldon Johnson, right? You mentioned Jeremy Shohan, Trey Jones, and now Wemby. Like that's their core. And they have a couple veterans here. Zach Collins, you mentioned, Chetty Osman, who they got just randomly in a trade, which was just a great random pickup in the offseason for him from the Cavaliers. Those are two guys averaging double-digit points per game for you. Solid veteran leadership, just good vibes. You mentioned OKC, Chris. That's what I want to see OKC do right now. You have here's the thing. I think on both teams, but especially OKC, because I think some of their young guys are just around slightly more ahead, if not about the same level as some of the Spurs. You have SGA, who's the alpha. We know he's the guy of the team, right? He's the face of the franchise. You have Josh Giddey, who's the great all-around grab rebounds, get assists, boom, right?
Glue guy, he connects everyone.
Glue guy, connects everyone perfectly, and plays at a really good level too. Chet, who in his own right could be kind of like Wemby on his own team, just in terms of being like the potential of being a unicorn and with a unique skill set. Still need to eat an extra sandwich here or there, but aside from that, Chet's pretty good. I want to see them add some of the veteran pieces. You have the treasure trove, the ungodly amount of draft picks in this freaking thing. In OKC, you have the draft picks. You have even a couple young talents here and there. At the end of the day, you can make some moves now to get these, super 6-man, super 7-man star guys who could come off your bench and give you the solid 15 to 20 a night, 6-man of the year caliber guys. You could get that final piece or two to really put around your starting five definitively. Because you mentioned Lou Dort being a guy there. I still find it funny. He's younger than the both of us, but it feels like he's been there forever. These are two young teams that have done it the right way, and we're seeing it start to bear fruit. Their rebuild, the teardown, I think, is complete on both those teams. Now it's the building portion, and once it gets to the part where they're going to start making some trades here, like you said, Chris, I would love if OKC and San Antonio could get a little bit involved at this next trade deadline. Go for it, man. Just freaking go for it. That's the fun of the NBA is when you see these new young players crop up because, man, I know you mentioned the joke with LeBron earlier, but we're starting to reach the end here of a certain generation of players, Chris. Like the guys that you, Dame, and I all watched growing up in high school, they're old now. And there needs to be this new young crop of guys that come in. Even Giannis is getting close to 30, right?
Yeah.
And of course he's still going to be great for 5 years after that, but you have to see who are going to be the new faces around the league. They're not just one face of the league, but faces around the league. And if you have teams like San Antonio and OKC doing a great job with their picks and getting these guys, man, this is what you want to see in the NBA. For as much bleep as we give Adam Silver as commissioner, the league it's healthier than most other sports in terms of stars on multiple teams.
I've always been ready for like the new generation to step up. Just like I'm done with the Kyries and the James Hardens and all them. Speaking of James Harden,
That's a
traded,
transition.
traded when everyone was asleep. Not me though, because my sleeping schedule was chopped cheese. But traded in the middle of the night to the Los Angeles Clippers. The saga is over. He's gone from the Sixers. But the trade package is a bunch of scraps and a few picks, some of which aren't the Clippers picks, but I think the Sixers do get draft capital. PJ Tucker also goes to the Clippers. Harden expected to make his debut on Monday against the Knicks. LOL, who would have thought that? A player debuting against the Knicks. For the Sixers, I think they get these 1 year left contracts with like Marcus Morris and Nick Batum. And again, we talked about the draft capital, but they do get some cap space as well. And I do think getting rid of Harden was going to be inevitable, him leaving, but getting rid of Tucker's salary was huge. I think the Sixers did the right thing. They did as much as they could. I mean, a lot of back and forth. They weren't going to get enough of a decent package to make up for Harden's talent because first of all, he isn't that guy anymore, but No one wants him because the antics have now caught up to him. But the Clippers got him now. Clippers now move forward with the core of, they keep Terrence Mann, by the way, which is, I mean, to the Clippers, it's probably like, Jesus to them. So the core of the Clippers go with James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. I feel like I'm missing someone else. Who's the
Russ.
PJ? Oh my God, Russ, PJ Tucker, and then of course you have Norman Powell, you have Terrence Mann. Here's the
Bones
thing.
Highland they got last
Bones
trade
Highland,
deadline.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty, having Bones Highland is actually good for them. Bones Highland and Terrence Mann. Well, Terrence Mann isn't getting any younger. I mean, a lot of people think he's like this 23-year-old. I think he's like 27 at this point. But the thing is with the Clippers, and I know the joke has been made. It's like, well, they would have won the chip in like 2017, and I always thought. Here's the thing with the Clippers. It does not like I get it. I think they're better than they were without Harden. I do think Harden fixes a lot for them. I know he's not the same player, but they have a point guard who could also be an offensive threat. I thought Rondo was the good fit for them a few years ago, but just Rondo, like his playmaking ability wasn't enough to kind of fix the issues in that team. And there's a lot of issues with the Clippers, of course, but Russell Westbrook is just he's Russ, man. Like I know he's your point guard and he's played well with them ever since he got there, but it's Russ at the end of the day. Like it's like a nuke that you know is gonna go off. And like you saw yesterday against the Lakers, bro. It's just the slipping, the overpassing, passing to people who aren't in good positions. It's just he's not that guy, man. I do think Harden's gonna be good for them. He's gonna like organize a lot of things for them while being an offensive threat. I think it takes the load off of Kawhi and PG. They don't have to do all of it, all the heavy lifting. So I think James Harden's a good fit for them. However, it's the Clippers. At this point, there's not much for us to say, and there's not much for us to expect at this point. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, James Harden, the Clippers. I mean, that's a semifinals exit waiting to happen. It's just I have to wait to see how this unfolds. It has all the makings of a comedy show, but like for the Clippers, it's championship or bust at this point. Because if you don't win this year, I don't know where we go from here. So Clippers, I can't. What do you want me to do? I can't give you I think they're better with Harden. I think they needed him. I think the Sixers did the right thing. Sixers are in prime position to make good moves to support Embiid because now I think they have the money. I also think this is the confidence instilled in Tyrese Maxey, who I do think will be the second guy in command. Tobias Harris. I think they'll be in the market for to trade for someone, maybe like a Zach LaVine or D'Angelo Russell, who are not great fits, but I do think they're decent fits next to someone like Embiid. But I also think that long term, the cap space that they kind of created will be good for them because they'll be in the free agent market, and I just think there's more of like a window for them to like make a decent supporting cast with Embiid because Embiid's turning 30 if he's not 30 already. So they kind of have to move quick, but they open up some possibilities in terms of what they could do creatively with the roster. Jurg, I know it's the Clippers and I know it's James Harden. It's just one of those things where it's like it's hard to like kind of, you know, say anything about it because it's just like it's a wait and see approach because I need to see a championship, bro. At least a finals appearance for the Clippers, man.
Yep.
That's all I need. Like I need to see that. The ends justify the means, but like what do you want me to do? I can't put my faith in them. Even they could have gone like Damian Lillard, for example, right? I
Yeah.
still would have to be like, I need to wait and see.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just that's how it is. So yeah, what'd you make of the trade?
The Clippers just feel so snake bitten every single time. It
Yeah.
feels like something goes wrong. They were looking good in the playoffs, and then Kawhi got hurt. They were coming back against the Utah Jazz. Kawhi got hurt. Oh, they came back. But then, yeah, Kawhi was out for the rest of the postseason. Plenty of time after that. And they lost to the Phoenix Suns in the conference finals. Oh, the Clippers are looking good. Pandemic, bubble. Hey, they're up 3-1 in the semifinals. Choke yet again. This is such a snake bitten franchise going back so very long. Um, Even before this goes back probably to their days as the Buffalo Braves, probably. Um, the Los Angeles Clippers just are used to bad things happening to them, and like you said, it's a wait and see, and it's not just a wait and see on like we all know the talent's there, but and I say this as someone who was high on the Clippers even before this trade, and you gotta like how is this gonna work because like you said, Chris, I think the thing has always been, hey, Chris Paul, excuse me, I was thinking of an era back, but Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they need a point guard like a passer to really help things out there. And they got a guy who could pass, but that's not always the first thing he's looking to do on the court, you know. And you got another guy who he's going to sit out from time to time here. I will say this: when he was at the peak of his powers, James Harden did sit out way less compared to a lot of the other stars of his day. I do want to give that like just
Yeah,
due for him.
he's decent. He has decent durability compared to most.
Yeah, for a guy who you might be shocked sometimes considering how he plays and what he does in his spare time. But I think with Harden, I gotta believe this is what they're hoping. I feel like the Clippers are hoping this is going to be what the Lakers tried to do with Russ, but actually work. Where the loan justification, and I say loan because this was literally the only thing that they tried to that could have salvaged the trade, was the Lakers when they got Russ. The whole idea was, a we'll build a team around these three, and when LeBron and AD got to miss games, Russell Westbrook could step up and still show he's that guy. Problem is, he just wasn't that guy anymore. And it's not disrespectful, NBA Twitter, to say that someone's not the same what they were 5 years ago. It's just a case. When it comes to Harden, because his skill set's so different, I don't know what to refer to as not being the same. But we know he's not that superstar anymore. We know he's not the MVP anymore. We know like he's not going to consistently have 30, 40-point games every single night. But I think this is just another insurance policy that they're going to try to get around the new CBA rules with. Be like, hey, Kawhi's got to rehab a little bit. Paul George maybe he needs to take like a 2-3 game stretch off here. And you got Russ and Harden leading this team now in the games that one or if not both of them got to miss. I think that's what they're trying to do here. I think they're trying to superstar their way into the postseason and then hope things go from there. And look, man, Tyronn Lue has dealt with so many different stars in his coaching career. It's absolutely absurd the list of names he's had to work with. Only one of those guys has given him a championship. And you say the ends justify the means here, Chris. You can only say that when you've won. The Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup this past year in hockey, right? And for all the cutthroat management that they've done since the first year of their franchise, and they've given up on players, they just traded guys, they cut bait with them, and they're too harsh. They fired they fired 2 coaches now in the history of the franchise. This, that, and the third. They got the championship. It's all that matters. And there's only so much we could say about their tactics right now because it justified the Stanley Cup justified everything Vegas did since their first year to build. This is only justified if they win. And the big question is, can the Los Angeles Clippers win the championship? And I want to see them in a full 7-game series against a fully healthy Lakers team. I want to see them in a fully healthy series against the Nuggets. I want to see them against the Suns whenever the Suns decide to actually be healthy. More than 10 games at a time, if that ever happens. The Clippers, I think it's confident to say, do they belong in the top 4 in the West in that regard? Yes. But what are they going to do when it matters the most, man? That they need to exercise their franchise's demons. They need to exercise Russell Westbrook's demons. They need to exercise James Harden's demons. They need to exercise Paul George's demons. I don't know if this is a team of demon slayers here, Chris. We got a big question about that.
Mm,
I
mm.
think I think Tyronn Lue, I think he's a better head coach than most have tried to give him credit for. I think he's fantastic at dealing with stars. This is a big test. Can Harden really gel with PG and Kawhi the way that we think they will, the way that PG and Kawhi wanted to? Because remember, in the summer, we were hearing reports that, they want Harden there. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
bro.
think it's a whole lot of question marks.
Always want him there until middle of the season, and then everyone's gonna just throw shots at each other.
What is this, subliminal shots? Is this all elite wrestling? Well, I thought we were talking about NBA here.
Oh boy, oh boy. Them and the Clippers, I see some similarities, but I mean, look, Russ did wonders, but I do think Russ has a better mentality than James Harden does. Even though Russ can be very, like I don't know the way Russ moves sometimes, childlike, but I don't know, man. It could be a comedy show if they win the chip. All 2 of them. Kawhi Leonard's my favorite player, so that's another chip for him. But because when Kawhi Leonard is on one, that's the thing. Like, and he deserves a lot of the shit that just his body breaking down and just his non-commitment to be like a leader. When he's on one, and we saw kind of in the first round against the Suns last year in the playoffs, he is top 5 players in the world when he's like healthy and he's like focused. We know what we're gonna get with him. PG, I do think the playoff P thing, yes, is a joke, but I do think a little bit blown out of proportion. It just everything. I don't know. I like the Clippers have it. They have it, but their execution level is just so ass. But I don't know. It makes for good content at least, right? All right, let's move over to the East. Okay, Jurg, I don't think there's a lot I want to talk about in the East because look, I'm a Knicks fan. Dame's a Knicks fan. You're a Heat fan. Both teams are kind of in shambles right now. The Heat, I think Damian Lillard not being on your team, that was gonna be like the biggest domino effect because Bradley Beal went to the Suns. There's not like a star you could that's available for you guys to get. You lost Gabe Vincent. You lost who was the other shooter that you got? Max Strus.
Yep.
You guys lost a lot of these important players, and you
Partially due to ownership, which is really
yeah
upsetting.
yeah. But I think the Heat have earned the benefit of the doubt. Where I mean, it's just like the start of the season they're not looking too good. Tyler Hero's looking good though. Jimmy, has his moments where his age is showing, but I don't know, man. They're always going to be in the lookout for a star. I think they're always going to be involved whenever a trade demand occurs. They're already like the odds-on favorite to land like a Zach LaVine. I don't think they're interested in Zach LaVine, but I just think because of the Heat, they're always going to be the odds-on favorite. It's the Riley effect, but
I'd take him at this
th-
point. God damn it.
I mean, yeah, you kind of need to because I mean, the good thing is that Tyler Hero looks like a stud right now. But
It's
I do
almost like
think you
he can
need
actually
more.
play basketball. NBA Twitter, you bunch of fucking harlots. Who knew he could
You,
actually
but
ball?
the thing is, I know what I'm getting in Bam. I think Tyler Hero's development is more important because I do think his ceiling as a scorer is higher than Bam's. Of course, I think a lot of people agree with that. But Jimmy's getting older, and Jimmy's body's kind of already breaking down. And usually, like he kind of saves it for the playoffs, so I kind of get just like holding back. But Hero's emergence, that's huge. He has survived every trade rumor possible, man. So I mean, I think he's there for the long term at this point. I mean, you're not going to trade Tyler Hero for like a Zach LaVine, but I do think they're in need of a star or at least get some more pieces, bro. Because
Yeah.
I mean, they're 1-4 right now, and Jimmy's already having like these rest days. Like, oof, not great. But again, I'll never count out the Heat. It's very early in the season. The Knicks, I don't want to talk about them right now. Julius Randle is just on like the top three worst people in the world to me. I want him gone, and I want his family gone. I don't want to. This is why I don't want to talk about him because I'm gonna get personal.
Right.
So no, the Knicks, middle of the pack, not looking good. Everyone looks a little sus. The only people on the Knicks that look good is RJ Barrett, who is nursing left knee soreness, and Mitchell Robinson. Everyone else, Jalen Brunson, still good, but doesn't look as great as last season. Randall's Randall. I'm not going to even comment on that.
I
I think
love the
everyone.
fact that both of our teams, our young shooting guard and our center, are what we love the most, and everything else is just disappointing us right now.
It's just I can't. At least you got you, but like the Heat are the Heat, right? I mean the Knicks. That's the reason why I wasn't like ecstatic about the season is because like,
The top of the East.
what do you want me to do if
Yep.
I'm a Knicks fan? Well, we signed DiVincenzo and he looks good. I like DiVincenzo a lot. But what do you want? Like at this point, and I'm not saying this because I want them to rush to get like a Joel Embiid. I don't even want Embiid on the Knicks, by the way.
Hmm.
He's not worth it for the amount we'd have to give up for him. We've gotten as far in the playoffs as we did than he has in his whole career, both
Very true.
semifinals. So I don't want to hear it. What do you want me to do at this point? Like my head coach is Tom Thibodeau, who we've talked about this high floor, low ceiling. He's gotten them like prepared. Like he's instilled this mentality in our young players that I think will be beneficial for them in the long term. But it's Tom Thibodeau, and I have Julius Randle as my star player. Quote star player. What do you want me to do? I can't keep treading this water. Like it's the same story all the time. Me getting pissed about Randall and all that shit. It is what it is. Hopefully RJ's all right. I would like for them to rest him as much as possible. I just don't know. The season's very bleak right now, and I just who's in the market right now for us to like go for? I do think when the Sixers traded Harden, I thought the odds of Embiid staying increased a lot. I really do. I think he's gonna stay there. I think they're gonna re-sign him, and they're gonna be like, well, we have like an open field in terms of what we could do. So there's more creativity. I think he stays with them. I hope so. So yeah, looking bleak for the Knicks and the Heat right now, but we'll see how it goes. The only thing I will say before we move on to the NFL, Celtics are the team to beat for me in the East right now. I thought I still think it's them and the Bucks in terms of like who has the crown in the East. I think Lillard's shortcomings as a defender will ultimately hold the Bucks back. And the fact that Middleton's aging right now, I think, and the Celtics look really fucking good, bro. Really fucking good. I think KP For we all have our thoughts on him. I think he's a perfect three, not small forward, but he's like a perfect three option, especially when Tatum is your number one and Jalen Brown's your number two, and then you have Drew Holiday as your point guard. I think it's a perfect fit, and they look so good defensively. I don't know, man. I worry about the Bucks. I do not have. I didn't have. I was like, okay, I got the Lillard trade. You make that trade if you're the Bucks. But for some reason, I'm just not fully sold. I don't think they could beat the Celtics in a 7-game series. I really don't right now. Gun to my head, if you ask me who I have the Celtics in 6 if they were to
Mm.
play the Bucks. That's just me. I think the Celtics are the team to beat right now.
I
Again,
my
early,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So my lone disagreement will just be I think whoever will win that series is just whoever gets home court in Game 7. I don't think either team is good enough to beat the other one on their road court in Game 6. Uh, I still think there's something missing from the Celtics in terms of that mentality, right?
Right.
I know you can make the whole, oh, they came back down 3-0 last year in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I guess
Yeah,
Holiday.
and they lost at home.
I guess
And
Holiday's that guy, right?
yeah, but then he got smoked in the playoffs last year in the first round.
That's a good point. We have
Drew, like
Tatum to
like
like kind of make up for it. Go ahead.
and here's the thing with both those teams. Obviously the Celtics are masking a lot better because God, they're scoring. But there are flaws to keep looking at for this team come the postseason that we need to keep track of. First off, they're not going to be scoring at this clip in the postseason. It's not going to happen. Let's just point blank that right now. But I think the thing for me, the two biggest things is Drew Holiday going to be good in the postseason, or is he going to kind of fall off? Because I'm being real with you, Chris. Ever since that final series against the Suns and what he was doing against D-Book and Chris Paul defensively, hasn't really showed up for the Bucks too much in the postseason when he was there. And now with the Celtics, this is a guy who got torched in the playoffs last season, just absolutely torched. He was viewed as, oh, you put him on Jimmy, you're going to be able to slow down Jimmy. Butler hung 90 on in the last 2 games of that series or something like that. Maybe not 90, but 80 something. You know what I mean? And I think with Porzingis and Al Horford, man, there's a lot of concerns with those two because Porzingis, it's been great so far for these 4 games. What
We'll see though how that ends up.
is he going to make it to game 82? Is he going to be
Yeah.
healthy for the playoffs? Is Al Horford like, dude, I don't know what kind of like crystal pixie dust that Al Horford took from somebody.
It's
How,
crazy,
how
bro.
he's still performing fine at this age, I don't really get. But like it's the meme. He can't keep getting away with this because when is he going to fall off and not be good in the rotation anymore? It's gotta happen at some point. Like there's just no way. So I think there's still some questions to answer with the Celtics. I think the thing is the Celtics have the style of play, and I think the regular season early is more to where they can hide those weaknesses and not worry about them. I think the Bucks' weaknesses were always going to be something that they need to clean up early in the regular season. And like you said, you have that dangerous pick and pop duo now. I think the offensive potential is there for Milwaukee, but it's can Chris.
Defensive falling off though.
Yep. Can they figure things out defensively? Is there a rotation that they could figure this out in? A lineup, maybe a trade at the trade deadline, but I know that's looking way far ahead in the
Do
future.
they even have the
Um,
assets to pull off a trade?
Chris, we've been asking this question for so many years, and they
You know
still haven't
what?
found
Yeah,
out.
I'm not even
Like,
gonna.
let's, but like, is this something that they could figure out? Again, is it a coaching thing? Is it a rotation? Remember, this is a rookie head coach now for the Milwaukee Bucks in Adrian Griffin, and he's got a lot to prove, right? You have the veteran talent from last year where Chris Middleton is a guy that suffered a lot of injury last season. Like I mentioned, Devin Booker missed half the year. I think Chris Middleton played 27 games last season, maybe a little more than that. He missed a lot of time, man, and I think he's trying to figure his way back into this team. And now with Dame being there, I think you have Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis there is still relatively fine, but we know Brook Lopez is strictly defense and a 3-pointer here and there at this point. This is a very veteran laced team that is trying to make things work now with this club. I think the thing with Milwaukee is that they think that they have a window here. I'm going to say this right now, Milwaukee. You might think you got a window with Dame and Giannis. Windows can close real quick, man. I'm telling you this as a Heat fan. I'm telling you this straight up. That window can shut and it can be over very suddenly. You don't want to waste any time here, and you need to make the shrewd, proper financial decisions and roster decisions. And I think Milwaukee, they need to be a class of pure execution at this point. My last note about the Bucks, and I know people will be like, "Oh, you're overreacting to a quote." Giannis, we've said this before on the pod. I'm sick of the humble shit. This isn't Dame's team.
What do
You
you?
want
Oh my god.
you want to see a team with Damian Lillard being the lead guy? Look at the last decade of his career. Every single time that Dame got eliminated in the playoffs, they lost in either 4 games or 5 games. Giannis, please stop and just be the guy of
He's
this
not gonna
team.
beat it. I'm sorry, Jerk. I'm putting my foot down here. He's not gonna beat it. He doesn't have the
Then,
mentality to do it.
then,
I'm
ladies and
sorry.
gentlemen, the Milwaukee Bucks are not going to win another championship. They're just
To be
not.
honest, I don't. Dude, here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I'm sorry to like kind of interrupt here, but
No, you're good.
I'm sorry, but a caliber of Giannis's player needs at least 3 championships.
Agreed.
Needs at least three.
I've said this before on the pod. I like to me the superstars. There are only a handful of superstars in this league that have game breaking ability to where they
He's
can
one of
take a
them. Yeah.
game and bend it over their knee. And Giannis to me has always been one of them. But some of this off the court stuff just frustrates me so much, and it goes back to the whole. I forget the exact quote, so I'm not going to try to misquote him. But he said a quote recently about after the Heat game, or it was before the Heat game, about getting to guard Jimmy and something along those lines. Like,
Oh my God, he's like finally or some shit like that, right?
and it's like, Giannis, this didn't have to be the case because you could have said in the playoffs,
They've just done
put
it.
me on Jimmy. This is the funniest thing. The one time the Heat have not made it past the first round over the last 4 years, it was because Giannis and Lopez and Drew and that entire
They went
Bucks defense
nuclear.
focused on Jimmy. They all did. Look at I think it was 2021. Look at the 2021 Bucks defense against the Heat versus 2020 and 2023. I'll tell you what the fuck the difference was. It was Giannis being if not the primary defender on Jimmy, the very next secondary defender. Every single time
Yeah.
Jimmy went to the rim, Giannis was there. Every single time he was on the perimeter trying to make a move, Giannis was there. And yeah, no duh. I know he missed time in last year's postseason, but he still came back. He still played, and Jimmy torched him. And this whole this is Dame's team, and I finally get to guard Jimmy again. Like, shut up, bro. You be not just the guy. We know you're the guy of this team. Be the NBA's guy. Be
He's not.
the
He's not
ultimate
good.
killer. And if you're saying that, I'm not necessarily going to agree or nor disagree with you, Chris. I'm just going to leave it for now. But if what you're telling me ends up being true, they're not going to win a championship with this deal. They're just not. Like, you cannot win if your alpha is not playing like an alpha. Say whatever you want about the jokes with Jimmy. He was a freaking alpha at the end of the playoffs last year, man. He was. Well, for the whole playoffs. I know it kind of sputtered out at the end of the playoffs. It'd be nice if some players had gotten back in the lineup, but performed better. But ultimately, he was an alpha. He gives off alpha. Jason Tatum here and there, it's a little bit off. Like, he tries a little bit too much with the whole Kobe thing, and I'm gonna text Kobe before these Game 7 or whatever. But Jason Tatum can be at least components of an alpha personality, right? We know LeBron is one. We know, like, Kawhi was one in 2019. Steph is one. You gotta be an alpha in this league, bro. That's just straight up. You mentioned it yourself, Chris, the greatest of all time. Multiple conversations. You make a top 10 list of your NBA players. I think nearly everybody's list, all the guys have multiple championships, right? Is Jordan,
Jokic
Kobe.
is creeping, by the way. This is important for Giannis because
Yep.
if Jokic gets one before him, another one before him,
Yep.
the conversations will be had.
And again, look, we always say that people will forget, in history is history and it's written the way it is. No, I think I think we're going to remember the 2023 MVP award as the one where the media forced Joel Embiid to be the MVP of that season. I don't care what anyone says. Jokic should have been the MVP of last season. He should be a 3-time in a row MVP, and he would also be a 1-time NBA champion and a Finals MVP, and that dwarfs Giannis's legacy.
That would have been crazy. All three of those in one season.
Yep. And right now, like you said, the Nuggets, they're looking really good. And if they win especially if they repeat,
Oh
man,
boy.
that's a big
Yeah.
step up for Jokic, who we're talking about being the 6th greatest center in NBA history right now. He easily goes top 5 in that convo, and he might creep into the top 10. But as I was saying, at the end of the day, and this will be my last point about this because I think we will move on because we both know, even Dame would agree, like, those are the top 2 teams in the East. And then there's a very, very mid portion of the middle of the conference.
Huge gap after those.
Huge gap after those two.
It's bad in the East, bro. Holy shit.
Yeah, the top champions, the top players of all time: Jordan, LeBron, Kobe. Right, usually 3 of the first guys that people say: Tim Duncan,
Yeah.
Shaq, Larry Bird, Magic. Even if you want to put Steph in the top 10, I would argue Hakeem
Kareem.
Olajuwon deserves it in the convo. Yes, Kareem. It's tough with these guys because they're such a different era. But Wilt and Bill Russell, like, just to mention them, all those guys have at least minimum 2 rings.
So who do you think has the best chance to in this era right now? Who do you think has the best chance to enter that list? So like, I'll give you some names. I don't think KD's gonna do it. I don't think
No,
KD can.
I think he cost himself
So
too
me,
much.
the only realistic options right now is Giannis, Jokic. Who
Luka.
else? I feel like I'm Luka, and those 3. Those are the only 3. To me, those are the 3 best players in the world right now.
Absolutely.
Luke needs to do a little bit more winning. I mean, maybe an MVP. We need to get an MVP under Luka's belt at this point. But of those three, who do you think has the highest shot of like entering top 10 stratosphere? For me, it's Jokic. I'm sorry. I'm going Jokic.
If I had to give you an order right now, man, I think I'll surprise people. I'd put Giannis third. I got Jokic, Luka,
I
then
might agree
Giannis.
with you. I might agree with you. Luka's too good too early at this point.
Yep.
I don't know. It sucks to say. This is not a Giannis hate session, but like, it's a harsh reality session, bro. Like, he needs to just. I don't know, man. He's not going to be an alpha male jerk. I'm sorry. I know you're a lot nicer than I am, but like he's almost 30. That he's 28, which is kind of unreal. I thought he would at least be like almost 30.
It's more I want to be hopeful, man. Like,
I can't be hopeful,
I,
bro. It's been I've seen enough.
I understand. Dude, I have such a respect for Giannis. First off,
So do I.
shout out to the fact that all three of the top guys in the league are Balkans boys. You know, shout out to that
Yes,
first
yes,
and
yes,
foremost.
yes, yes.
Way to go for our region. But at the same time, like, I want to be hopeful because Giannis is so good. And you mentioned it earlier, Chris, appreciating greatness. I never want us to fall in the pit of not appreciating the greatness while it's in front of us because, man, oh, we're going to miss LeBron, Steph, and some of these guys when it's done. And similar in other sports, I want us to appreciate this. And maybe part of that is the thing. I want to be careful a little bit, to be honest. I've been critical of him before on the pod, but I've also had to defend him so many times. And it's very tough for me. But I think this season I think this season will do it for me, where if they lose to the Celtics in the playoffs, if they lose before the finals, honestly. I already said this is finals or bust that you made this trade. If they don't make it to the NBA finals at least, I don't think he has it in him. I just don't.
We'll see how the season goes, man. I'm genuinely interested. There's a lot of narratives going around after this season. All right, let's move on over to the NFL, where Jurg, we're at the midway point. I'll say this because I think I've talked about this with a few other people. Most the NFL has been wide open, in my opinion, in terms of like who could be the champion. I think there's so much parity in the league right now that I think it's anyone for the grabbing. No one has impressed me. No one has impressed me in the NFL to a point where I'm just like, okay, that's the solidified favorite. And there are a few teams that you give them the benefit of the doubt. They're just like, okay, they're always going to be in the mix because they're them, right? I look at like the divisions here in the AFC, right? Jaguars were 6-2. The AFC North is a bloodbath because I just talked about the Bengals. They're 4-3 right now, and they look like they've woken up. But the Ravens are first in the division. The Bengals actually last that division. So I think the Ravens, the Jaguars,
Well,
the Chiefs,
real quick on that, just the Steelers, Browns, and Bengals are all 4-3, same record.
same record. So and yeah, I mean, so I think there's so much parity in the league. Again, favorites in the AFC. I think you could make the argument for the Dolphins. I think you could make an argument for the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Jaguars, and the Bengals. I know the Bengals are tied with the Steelers and Browns, but it's just like, come on, let's be realistic here. I think we have more faith in the Bengals. So I just named like 5 teams in terms of like who could win the AFC. In the NFC, Eagles, 49ers, gap. But again, I do think Cowboys, Seahawks, and Lions can all make noise. So that's 5 other teams. I think the AFC is a little bit more spread out and teams are a bit closer to each other. I think for the NFC, it's the Eagles, 49ers, gap, Cowboys, Seahawks, Lions. Actually, Lions have earned my respect. So a lot of parity in the NFL, man, and I'm kind of excited because like I like that there's no overwhelming favorite. I just think that's the problem with the NBA right now. But for the NFL, I think I'm looking at these standings right now, right? NFC East, Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. You could write off the Commanders, Giants. This upcoming week of games is actually sick, bro. The amount of important games that are on it is just nuts to me. But so Eagles, Cowboys, that's gonna be a huge game. I think the Cowboys, if they win, oof. I still think the Eagles are the favorite here. But again, the NFC East could be for the taking because I think home field advantage would be nuts. The NFC West, I mean, it's not just a foregone conclusion that the San Francisco 49ers are going to win it. I think the Seahawks, we had them as a dark horse team, and we were right. That team, they just traded for, was it Leonard Williams?
Yeah, yep, Leonard Williams.
They just traded for Leonard Williams. They beefed up the defense. For the other divisions, NFC North, I think the Lions take this one. The Vikings, they were going to make it interesting until Kirk Cousins got injured. He's out for the year, but they did trade for Josh Dobbs. Not the, I still think that's a pretty decent move. I think he's a decent quarterback that just was dealt like the bad hand with the Cardinals.
He does
But
kind of need to reprove himself because he was good early on, but
yeah,
I've been seeing Cardinals fans saying that he was missing a lot of throws the last 2-3 games.
yeah.
And he kind of like he's been good. He obviously he's earned himself like 3-4 more
He's
careers,
got he's gonna
three
get
four more
weapons
years in
now
the
though.
NFL.
I think he
But
has a lot more weapons now. So now I expect some decent play from him. But yeah, I don't know. That's a kind of wait and see approach. I do think there's lines to take that. Bears, Packers done, dead. NFC South. Oh my god, I don't even want to talk about this division because it's just one of these teams is gonna host the playoff game, bro. Besides the Panthers,
that's
Panthers are
depressing.
cooked. Falcons, Saints, Bucks. Like they're literally the same. I think the Bucks are 3-4. It's because they had a bye week already. But like, I'm just so disgusted, bro. But look, I'll say this: the Falcons made the switch. Ritter out, Heineke in. I
Finally.
think I know, right? I don't even know why this was the thing in the first place, but like, I think Heineke's going to be good for them. But I mean, I guess I'll take the Falcons just because they have more of a fun roster. But Arthur Smith is a piece of shit coach, bro. They have so many fun weapons that like you would love to see them utilize more, but no, of course not. So I'm looking at this now. I think my favorite so far in the NFC is the Eagles. But their secondary jerk is a concern.
Mm.
It's a big concern now. I think once the 49ers get healthy, again, because they're in a bye week right now, which I think is good. I think Purdy needed that because he was getting banged up. The concussion protocol thing with him is just very suspect to me. I'm seeing a lot of Tua vibes because he cleared those symptoms way too quick. And he hit his head in the Bengals game. Did not look great. Did not look great.
They
But
tried to force him back, and I
for
thought we
no
learned our
reason,
lesson that forcing
there's no
QBs.
exactly, bro. Because he made some really like there was some bad turnovers too. For me, it's the Eagles. I think it's gonna be the 49ers. I think those are two interchangeable, to be honest, in terms of like who do you think could win it all in the NFC. And I think the Cowboys and the Seahawks and the Lions are right after that. After that, I don't have like a particular favorite. I think of the Cowboys, Seahawks, and the Lions. I love the Lions a lot. They lack experience right now, so I have to hold off on them for a bit. I do think they win the division. I think they could also win a playoff game. Divisional round, I think, would be their cutoff point to me at least. I'm just looking out for the Seahawks, Jurg. I'm looking out at those Seahawks, man. They have my attention. They have my attention. But what do you make of the NFC? The state of the NFC?
Yeah, I think between the two, when it comes to the NFC, I think majority of the interest is just going to be who is going to end up getting the last wild card. It's still very close in the
Yes.
divisions. Don't get me wrong, but I think with like the difference between the AFC and the NFC, both is pretty relatively well deep in certain aspects, in one more than the other. But I think with the NFC, we know whether they win their next game against their divisional foe when they get to finally face them. You know, the Cowboys Eagles this week, like you said, primetime matchup, and then you get Seahawks, 49ers. I think at some point this season, I forget when exactly is the stretch, but they'll face each other 2 times within a 3-week span, I want to say. I think we know comfortably the Cowboys and the Seahawks are the top wild card teams, relatively speaking. And if it's not them, it's going to be the 49ers/Eagles, right? It's pretty good for the wild card. And then it's the fight for the seventh. That's the interesting thing. I just want to see who amongst the division winners slash potential division winners is going to be able to separate themselves more, because I think we've started to see, chinks in the armor, you could say, of flaws with the 49ers and Brock getting hurt and also some of their other guys getting dinged up. The Philadelphia Eagles have played around way too much this season in a lot of their games. 2 close games against the Commanders. The Jets game that they ended up losing. Uh, Dallas is going to be, I think, a more of a litmus test than I think we believed initially, because they need to prove themselves against a legitimate team here. The Detroit Lions, I think with the Kirk Cousins injury, it should be their division. They got to show, like, I'm confident in them, but they got to show that, hey, man, you got some killer instinct in you that Dan Campbell's talking about. Take those kneecaps and take the division and play as good as you can. Like, if you're Detroit, you can't be satisfied with this. You got to keep on going. You got to keep on playing to really sink things. And the NFC South. Chris, as much as I find the Saints mid, and as much as I don't like Derek Carr, you want to know why I hope the Saints would beat out the Falcons for this division if anyone had to between the two of them? Because if the Falcons win the division, Arthur Smith is keeping his job, and I don't want to live in that world. So I hope the Falcons fall off at some point, so that I also hope the Saints fall off, so that at this point the Buccaneers might as well just take the NFC
The only
South.
team you're rooting for is the one that has no chance, actually. The Panthers.
It's very true. It's very true. Hey, Chris, the comeback is coming. But um, the NFC South is ugly. The NFC South is going to be a prime pick for an upset, because they would
Oh yeah.
face they're most definitely going to be the last division winner, and they would face either the Cowboys or the Seahawks/49ers, let's say. road team is beating that one easily. So I think it's not even close. But the NFC is certainly interesting because you have the storyline of the Cowboys. Again, you talk about a team trying to exercise demons here, the Clippers and the Cowboys, and two separate worlds there, but so similar. The Eagles who are trying to get back to the Super Bowl, and how often, like, this is my thing, Chris. How often does a team that loses the Super Bowl make it back the next season? It's kind of rare, honestly, when your quarterback's name is not Tom Brady at the very least. So you have that. You have the Lions who are trying to reverse 60 years of mediocrity and even lesser than, like, let's be real here. The top three players in Lions franchise history, two retired early, and the other one won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles. So you got some making up to do there for Detroit. And then it's the Seahawks and the 49ers, both storied franchises in that division. The Seahawks with more recent, in terms of Super Bowl winning success, but the 49ers, they have the legacy marquee franchise, made the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, trying to get there. Kyle Shanahan needs to prove a lot of people wrong, I think, in some of his stuff. So I think, Chris, you mentioned the parity. I think hunger is the word to describe. I think especially the NFC compared to the AFC. The NFC, I think, is a lot of hungry teams, man, that want to prove themselves, that want to make it to the Super Bowl, get back there in the cases of guys like Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts. Um, and I guess Shanahan more as a coach than obviously the QB because Brock Purdy won there when they lost. But I think the NFC's hungry, man, to just go at each other and figure out who's going to win and make it all the way to the big game. I think that's the ultimate thing. And I love it when the teams, even the lower ones, are still trying. Like we might get a shock run out of somewhere here, man. Like if you're talking about
I
the
hope so.
final wild card spot, Chris. They did just lose, and I'm very upset the fact that because I thought they could have performed the game better. But I don't want to fully count out the Rams yet because
I was just gonna bring them up, Jerk. I was
their
just gonna bring them up.
their offensive playmaking ability, just with Cup and Nakua alone, Matt Stafford, it looks like he's better than last season. And if the defense can just put it together a little bit more, I think the Rams could be a very dangerous seventh seed. And if I'm the NFC West winner or even the Eagles, I'm not looking forward to facing the Rams in the first round. Like it would not be a fun matchup.
The issue here's the thing, because I like the Rams a lot. I for some reason, like, I have a soft spot for them. Maybe it's because I love Cooper Cup, but they should be a wild card team. But then, like, I look at the losses. I mean, they got pummeled. They got smacked by the Cowboys. But, like, that loss, the Steelers, was so disappointing. And I'm like, what are we doing? It's just, there's something about the Rams that just scream unserious to me. And now Stafford, I think, is kind of hurt right now because he's kind of dealing with a thumb sprain or something. But they have so much talent on that team, man. Like, they got to put it together, bro. Because I do think that wild card spot will be wide open. For me, like, bro, it's always just make the playoffs in the NFL. For example, if the Rams play the Lions in the first round, in the wild card round, I mean, I can't fully, go with the Lions here to win that. Like, I do think the Rams have enough talent to, like, make it spicy, but I'm with you. I'm just a little disappointed. I'm just a little disappointed by them sometimes. Like, their losses, I don't know. They're 3-5 right now, so they're not out of it yet. I do expect
Inconsistent.
the NFC South to kind of, huh?
Inconsistent is the
What happened?
Rams.
Yeah. Very inconsistent. So I do expect one of the NFC South teams to fall off, but the Rams, they need to get it together. Who are they play the Packers this week. If you don't beat the Packers, then what are we doing here? I mean, they're already having questions about Kevin Love. So I mean, Jordan Love. So let's get it together, Rams, please. I believe in you, please.
I think the Packers would prefer Kevin Love at QB at this point. You've seen those
Yeah,
outright passes.
probably, yeah. Other than that, because after the Rams, I'm looking at, like, the Commanders. They're on a fire sale right now at the trade deadline. Packers done, Giants dead, Bears dead, Panthers dead, Cardinals dead. You just need to, like, outlast the rest of the NFC South.
I'm saying this right now. If the Giants lose to the Raiders, no one's job is safe there. I'm just saying
Oh
that.
boy, oh boy, yeah. All right, well, let's go to the AFC. Kansas City, Miami Dolphins, Jacksonville Jaguars, Baltimore Ravens, all tied for first place. They're the division leaders so far, all 6-2. After that, it's the Bills, it's the Steelers, it's the Browns, and then the Jets and the Bengals are all tied at 4-3. Um, yeah, this is kind of interesting. I think the wild card teams for the AFC is also going to be like just a world war here, because I think this. Well, look, the Steelers were my dark horse pick before we made our predictions here. I think they're solid, dude. I don't think you want to play the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be honest. They look decent, and we talk about, like, the Bengals, but, like, that division is kind of like a death zone, bro. Because the Browns have the Bengals number, Steelers make it tough for anyone, and the Ravens, I think, to me, are like the favorite to win the division. They're 6-2 right now too, so I don't know, man. I think the Ravens should win this division, but I can't count out the Bengals, bro. They're just so they never die. They
Yeah,
never die.
they're a second half
Jacks,
team.
yep. Jacksonville, I think for as good as they are right now, I think they're the worst team at the top of
Really,
all the division winners
really.
of all the divisions, the
Okay.
division leaders. So Chiefs, Dolphins, Jacksonville, Baltimore. I have the least faith in the Jaguars in terms of like the division leaders. I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. They have some decent weapons, but I don't know, man. Like I don't have as much faith in them as I do with the other teams. Um, Dolphins and Chiefs this weekend, bro. In Germany, by the way. Huge game, dog. Because I'll say this: Dolphins have a lot to prove because they've lost to a lot of good teams. They've beaten a lot of bad teams, so they have stuff to prove before we, crown them. The Chiefs, I'm a little concerned, Jurg. It's the Chiefs. They have Mahomes. It's Kelsey. It's Reed. My worries not as high because it's them. But man, I don't know. The receiving core concerns me. The defenses look good, which is good. But I don't know, man. For some reason, their offense hasn't clicked, and I think them standing still at the trade deadline is going to fuck them a little bit because I think they needed to make a move somehow. So I'm a little concerned about them. Baltimore, I think if they stay healthy, they could be a problem for anyone. I think the Bills are a guaranteed wild card spot, if not a division winner. I think either of those, they'll make the playoffs regardless. But again, we've talked about the Bills. I don't want to really talk about them. I think the Bengals will secure a wild card spot. After that, it's the last wild card spot is up for grabs, and I think it's between the Steelers, the Browns have somehow stayed alive, the Jets, the Chargers. I don't know. I think it's going to be tough to argue who you think would get the last wild card spot in the AFC. I love that the Jets are staying alive, bro. Oh my god,
Right.
I can't believe the Jets are staying alive.
Shout out to you guys, man. Shout
Yeah,
out.
they're fun to root for, even though they make it tough. But shout out to Zach Wilson. I mean, he stayed alive. His play has been pretty, but like it's decent enough to like be 4-3. If they beat the Chargers on Monday, oof.
I'm saying
Oh
this right
man,
now. I'm not saying this to disrespect your team. Brendan Staley's got to go if they lose that game.
oh yeah. I mean, the Chargers should be the final wild card spot, but you don't know. I mean, there's again parity. A lot of yeah. I mean, yeah. Jerg, what do you make of the AFC so far? And then we'll talk a little bit about the trade deadline because
Yep.
some moves are made.
Yeah, like you said, I'll be quick with this and pretty brief. Very much parity. The composition of teams, I think, like the lower portion, quote unquote, of the AFC, I think is deeper than the lower portion of the NFC. I think you can make like I know this is not the highest bar to clear, but like plenty of these AFC wildcard teams, I think could pull off some upsets in the NFC. And I'm not just talking about beating the NFC South team. I'm talking about legitimate teams here. I think you look at all the teams that are in about 500 or close to it. I think there's a clear strength they have and there's a clear flaw. The Pittsburgh Steelers' inconsistency on offense, the fact that they've been outgained every single game this season. I think they're the only team that's above 500 to be at that point in this juncture. They also have the worst point differential in terms of teams that are at 500 in the AFC at a minus 34. The Jets, the Bengals, like teams like that are slightly better. They're both negative as well, but they're still better than that. So it's the inconsistency there, and Matt Canada being terrible. Deshaun Watson is overpaid for nothing. The Cincinnati Bengals, they're starting to catch fire. Can they keep it up? Because they have a really tough schedule, man. Because they've been good the last couple of
They might
years.
have dug themselves too deep with the 3 losses to start off.
Exactly. So we have to wait and see there. We need to give them, I think, 2-3 more weeks to see what the record is before we can make a full evaluation there. The Jaguar, Chris, this is my weird thing. I know this might be a hot take. I think the shakiest of the 6-2 teams in the AFC is the Ravens to me. I think it's the
You think
Ravens to me.
so? They have lost some pretty bad games.
Their losses are very poor, and even some of their wins are just like you're not dominating. I know you have your concerns about the Chiefs, and I do not blame you at all. And this is a hot take right here. I think the Jags are the second best of the 6-2 teams. I think they are. I know they had the tough losses early on in the season, man. They were 1-2, but they won 5 in a row. They're looking real good. Trevor Lawrence is starting to get things clicking on the offensive side. The defense is making a little play here and two there. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, when they're not losing players to gambling addictions, are doing a pretty good job in terms of roster building and team performance. I think the Ravens' losses to me just like it's a stick in the craw. And I think in even some of these wins, they've just been too slow starting. And I don't think you can afford that, man. I think it took them a little bit to get going against the Cardinals. And there's no reason the Titans game should have been as close as it was. And you also consider the two losses they had. That sorry excuse for a loss against the Steelers. I'm sorry, you can't let the Steelers finish out the game scoring the 17 or whatever unanswered. And the loss against the Colts. I know the Colts do that once every single year, but still, it's rough. The Dolphins, if they're just going to pick apart worst teams, they're probably going to win the division. Buffalo, Chris, for a very brief moment, we thought Buffalo had solved their problems. But the loss to the Patriots and that underperformance against the Buccaneers, they're on fraud watch again. Um, and yeah, extremely deep, extremely talented teams all around. I think this conference is looking outstanding. I think this wild card hunt is like you said, there's going to be a world war there, which you might see that kind of offensive firepower. Maybe that's why we're having that game in Germany this week ultimately. But I think if you're NFL fans all around, you're eating swell over the next 2 months, man. A lot of these games are going to matter in December. And I said this at the very start, Chris, of this season you for the first week or two, my big takeaway was you get to talk about a lot of these teams after the first week or two of the season. Unless you're the Cardinals this season or the Bears and Panthers, your season wasn't dead. 29 teams sort of can talk about how they have a little glimmer of hope. And I think even more seriously, you have 20 teams that are able to talk about their team making the postseason and going on like some sort of mini run. That's fantastic. You want to talk about perfectly balanced and healthy as a league? NFL competition's doing that right now.
Yep. Trade deadline passed on Tuesday. Some moves, not an eventful deadline, if I say so myself, but I'm looking at it right now. We talked about the Leonard Williams trade to the Seahawks. I think the Giants got some decent compensation there. I think this is step one, sign one that the Giants are like saying the season's clipped. I think they're gonna tear it down. Daniel Jones is already hurt. Tyrod Taylor's hurt. So I do think for them, I mean, they got some again decent draft compensation. That's what you should do if the season's lost. Commanders went fire sale mode. The Commanders trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Again, two big parts for defense. I think they're going full rebuild at this point. They did the right thing. No middle of the pack here. Yeah, the Niners get, I believe Sweat went to the Bears, and then the Niners got Chase Young, which is, I mean, that's something we could talk about. Other trades, we talked about Josh Dobbs getting traded to the Vikings. I think the Vikings think that they're not done yet at 4-4, and I think Dobbs is decent enough to maybe hold down the fort, possibly, especially if Jettas comes back soon. So yeah. Other than that, any other notable trades? The Lions traded for Donovan People-Jones. Just an extra weapon here. I think it's more of like a, just an insurance policy, but nothing crazy. I just think the Chase Young to the San Francisco 49ers was kind of like, whoa. Um, I think it was more stunned at the lack of movement at the trade deadline. I don't think any of these moves that kind of move the needle. I think the Niners are just better at what they do good so far. Do well, sorry. Other than that, I don't know. Nothing really moved me. Nothing really moved me. I mean, we kind of talked about the Vikings. There's nothing here. I was just surprised that like I think the Jets were like going big fish hunting, which I didn't think was going to happen anyway. But they were looking into Devontae Adams and Mike Evans. I think those moves kind of solidify the fact that they think Aaron Rodgers might come back just in case they do make a playoff run. I think the Chiefs should have went out and got a wide receiver. They didn't. Um, the Raiders didn't trade Devontae Adams, and I guess that's a good leeway. That's a good segue. Before I do go into the segue, Jerry, do you have any comments about the trade deadline?
No, ultimately, I actually wasn't that surprised that there wasn't a lot of movement. It didn't feel like there was a lot of a rush compared to last season when there was way
Yeah,
more movement.
sure. There was a
Um,
lot last year.
yeah, it's kind of disappointing, but I think I think a lot of teams just decided to stand pat with what they had, which bold move. And we'll see how it works out. But I think this trade deadline just showed us who the contenders and pretenders are in terms of everything. Like I think even with the lack of movement, I think we kind of see in certain instances who believes in their team, who doesn't, and who's just like, well, we might as well just keep it together. So why not?
We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Again, a lot of parity right now. Nothing like league shifting. Raiders. McDaniel's fired, and their GM, I believe, was fired as well, right?
Yep, Ziegler.
Both gone. It just they pulled it off right after the trade deadline, though. I just feel like it was a little weird. They did it too late, in my opinion, but I think it was the right move. I just think the vibes are at an all-time low.
Yep.
They're benching Jimmy G,
Yep.
and who's
Aiden
starting for them
O'Connell,
again?
baby. Aiden
Aiden
O'Connell.
O'Connell will be the starting QB going forward. I think they needed to do it for the vibes of the team. I think Devonte Adams was just morally at an all-time low. I think Josh Jacobs just didn't know what was going on with the offense. He was still playing well. He just was like, no, it's not my job to fix the holes in the offense. It's just that team is in shambles, and I think this is the best thing they could do if you're not going to trade Devonte. I think this is the most you can do, is just to fix the morale of the team, because what, they're 3-5. They're not technically out of it yet, but man, that Lions game was insane, bro. Insane in terms of just like how many things went wrong for them. And yeah, Jimmy G, I didn't like the signing in the offseason. I don't like it now. I just like it less at this point. But yeah, it's the Raiders are they need to tear it down. I think Adams is gone this summer. Renfro, I think, should have been traded at the trade deadline. Jacoby Myers barely got any touches in the game
Yeah,
against the Lions.
after the
The
first week
only
when he got the 2 touchdowns, he's done nothing
It
since.
was over. It was after that. The only bright spot I've seen from the Raiders is Max Crosby. That man is an animal, bro. But yeah, the Raiders are in shambles, but I do think this was the right move. I think McDaniels is a piece of shit coach. I think he was very overrated. The GM's gone. I think right now is just rebuilding the morale of the team, and they're just kind of like resuming the rebuild in the offseason. So yeah, what'd you make of it, Jurg? I mean, they again, it was like, was it early in the day or was it at night? I don't know. It
It,
just
it, it was like late at night going into the very early hours of the next day. Like I woke up to the news and I'm like, what the heck just happened? Because I went to sleep kind of late that night too, and I hadn't heard anything. I just go to sleep, wake up, boom, that happened. Like you said, this was much needed. I just think I don't want to call it toxic, but just the terrible environment that was done there. It's clear that Josh McDaniels cannot be a head coach in this league. We've seen it at 2 stops now. Funny enough, both AFC West teams, that he's just unable to be an NFL head coach. He cannot tailor his system to the strengths of his players, and he tries to force things his way, which is a discount. I'm not even going to say dollar store version, like 25-cent store version of the Patriot way. But you're not Belichick. Jimmy G ain't Brady, and man, you just misused the living hell out of Devonte Adams, Hunter Renfro, Josh Jacobs, traded Darren Waller. Just rough stuff. I mean, running Derek Carr out there, I actually don't blame him. That's the one good thing that Josh McDaniels did, because he kind of, anyways, like he's just like Jimmy G is just handsome Derek Carr, so it doesn't really matter. I, I'm going to be interested to see what this team does, because you mentioned tearing it down, Chris, and that is one of the options. But I wonder if Mark Davis has had a conversation with Devonte Adams and Max Crosby and is going to tell them that there's going to be a commitment to trying to be better. And I wonder if the two of them, if for return of being loyal to this sad sack of a franchise, if they're going to be able to get any say whatsoever in who the next GM would be and who the next head coach would be. Because it, like you said, they should be traded if they're not going to get word in that any way, shape, or form. Because you got to get people that are good at their job in there, man. And Ziegler, for the most part, he was there. He was just the guy that had to go there because John Gruden got Mike Mayock to be his puppet GM. I It's tough for him. I kind of feel bad because I don't know if he ever got a real shot. I think there was a lot of stuff that had to be cleaned up, and there was a mistake or two. Like the Devontae Adams trade, really, it was a fine trade, but he just let McDaniels kind of win out in the power struggle there. And I think sometimes GMs are too close to the head coaches that are brought in by them, and it cost them. And I think that's what cost the guy here. But yeah, McDaniels clearly proven he ain't it. Vegas, one of two ways they could go. I want to see where they do go. Would it be cool if they just tore it down the offseason? Absolutely. But
probably won't.
if there's one thing I've learned, it's not that cut and dry, especially because, bro, that's still a new stadium. They're still new to Las Vegas. The Knights just won the cup. The Aces just won the WNBA title. Shout out. There's our WNBA reference for the year. And you
The
have,
NBA will probably get a team soon.
which is well deserved. And I think if you're the Raiders, you kind of have to do something there. So at the end of the day, I think they need to keep their guys. They need to let their star players have some input. It can't be them just running everything. This ain't the NBA, but I think it is not out of the figment of the imagination to be like, hey, here's who we're thinking of hiring. This is what their vision is. Like, I think when you're hiring your GM, I think you need to include Devontae Adams and Max Crosby in those meetings, man. Because if you're not building the team around those two talents for a quick retool, what the hell are they there for? Get rid of them if you're wasting their time. So I think that's what it's ultimately going to be. And I know there's a lot of pain right now, Vegas, but maybe in the next couple of years, could be something. Probably not, but
Yeah. All right. Clowns and crowns. And we have to do it from week 6.
there's a
Because
lot to
we've
make up.
missed a few weeks here. Yeah. Dame's not here. Dame didn't give me his clowns and crowns, so it's just me and you, Jerk. Do you want to start off with the clowns for week 6? You want to take it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
my clown for week 6, Chris, I'm not gonna lie, there was a little bit of struggle for me in terms of the week 6 clown because as per usual, we got so many options. We had so many options when it came to it. But at the end of the day, if I had to give my clown to someone, Arthur Smith, only 16 points against the Commanders. Come on, bro. Stop misusing your weapons.
I'm gonna go with Brandon Staley. Chargers, man. He's gonna that team will always be a disappointment to me. They lost a winnable game. Not a winnable game because they lost to the Cowboys 2017, but I do think the game was there for the taking, and he is just a suspect coach, man. I think he's a losing coach. I think he'll be canned soon, and just I don't know, man. The decisions he makes, defense hasn't looked good that much this season. But those defensive pieces too, it's tough. It's tough for me to like look at Brandon Staley and be like, "Oh, you're a good coach. You're not even good at what you like specialize in." So, Brandon Staley is my clown for week 6. I guess I'll take week 6 crown. Jurg, I'm going with the Jets on this one. They
Nice.
defeated the Eagles, 20-14. I believe the Eagles didn't score in the second half. The Jets defense, of course, do what they do best, and they gave the Eagles their lone loss of the season so far, and that was a surprise. So shout out to the Jets, huge win for them. Jurg, your crown for week 6.
I'm on Ross St. Brown over 100 yards and a touchdown. It was kind of
Mm,
like a weird week 6, like not a lot of explosive offensive
yeah,
plays and performances. So I like you can't go wrong with a guy who came up big, especially because the Lions top rusher in that game, Chris, only had 15 yards. Yeah, 1-5 on 10 carries. Like they needed someone to step up, and Amon Ross St. Brown stepped up for them, so he gets my crown for week 6.
let's transition to week 7. I'll start off with the clowns here. My clown for week 7 is Derek Carr because that Thursday night game against the Jaguars and the Saints, abysmal to watch. They kind of came alive at the end, but Derek Carr, dude was like going off on Chris Olave for not running to get the ball, even though the ball was thrown 10 yards out of bounds. It was just tough to watch. Derek Carr was abysmal that game, and he was a little bitch too with some of his passes. Like he was not taking the blame, and even though he should have taken the blame because he was responsible for a lot of bad throws. So my clown is Derek Carr for week 7. Jerk.
My clown is the referees. There were some poorly officiated games in that week 7. Browns Colts had a couple of rough calls. I think Bills Patriots had a couple of rough calls. Just overall, not clean by the officials, man. And Eagles Dolphins too. What was it? 0 penalties called on the Eagles in that game. I think it was, Chris.
I think so.
You're telling me an NFL team win a whole game without committing a penalty? Really? Really, with some of the ticky tack stuff that gets called. So yeah, refs just not a banner week 7. They've had some rough weeks here recently. We're gonna point it out when it's well deserved.
Do you want to go for the crown?
Yeah, I'll go quick. Myles Garrett. Uh, the
Oh
the
God, what a
the
winner!
the reason the Browns will make the postseason if they do is because yes, the defense. Myles Garrett. If we weren't so quarterback centric with the MVP award, Chris, my top 3 candidates would not be quarterbacks for the MVP award this season. And Myles Garrett should be someone who gets legitimate MVP votes. But he will not because of the way the system is weighed. But yeah, crown of week 7. Just good God, that man knows how to make plays.
Yeah. My crown for week 7 is Kirk Cousins. The Vikings pull off the upset against the 49ers. Kirk Cousins was phenomenal that game. 35 for 45, 378 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he was surgical in that game, and he pulled off a massive upset. He literally, I think it was one of the best games I've seen Kirk Cousins play. And this was, I think, what was it? Prime time? Was it a prime time game?
Yep, it was
It might have been.
Monday
It was
Night
Monday.
Football.
Yeah.
Yep.
So shout out to Cousins, man. I'm sick for him, bro. He was such a nice guy. He looks like, and now he's out for the season. But what a great game against the 49ers. So a good consolation prize is getting my crown for week 7. All right, week 8, our last week of clowns and crowns that we're gonna talk about tonight. Jared, you want to start off with the clowns?
Yep. Matt LaFleur is my clown,
Ooh,
actually. I know that might be underrated, but only 10 points for the Green Bay Packers in this game. I know the Kirk Cousins injury was super late, so it's not like thing, but dude, the Packers offense has looked bad this season. And as part of that, Jordan Love? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I will give Jordan Love a clown one of these times. I gave him a undeserving crown earlier in the season. He gonna get a clown shoes one of these times, ladies and gentlemen. But Matt LaFleur is part of the reason the Packers have been bad. The offense is just rough. And it feels like if Aaron Jones isn't in the game for whatever reason, he doesn't want to use his running backs in any way whatsoever. Terrible offensive play calling. And I think Aaron Rodgers, we've seen, and look, you might feel whatever way you want to feel about him. He might get cut off on TV at times when he brings up stupid topics, but ultimately, dude, he hit a lot of deficiencies on that team, and it turns out the head coach was one of them.
Yeah, LaFleur is surprisingly on a hot seat soon, I feel like. I don't know. My clown for week 8 was, just the Raiders. We talked about it. That's why their head coach and the GM got canned. That game alone was just enough to just cut off the cord. Jimmy G's throws to Devontae Adams were just so out of reach. The offensive line was just abysmal. Jimmy G got freaking sacked up the wazoo. So Raiders, you got my clown for week 8. You want to do week 8 crown, sure?
Yeah. This is a relatively close one. I think they needed a bounce back. And even though the game was close, I got to give them Jalen Hurts 4 touchdowns in this one, 4 passing touchdowns through the air. Pretty well deserved, and not that much running from him. This was just a strictly passing game, and he did pretty good. I think in a game that the Eagles needed to get going into this Cowboys matchup, I think they needed the victory. So a crown for Jalen Hurts.
My crown for week 8 goes to the Carolina Panthers, getting their first win of the season against the Houston Texans. Man, did they need this. They were the only winless team in the NFL. They don't have their first round pick this upcoming draft, so the best thing you could do is just win as many games as you can. And I don't want the Bears to get another first overall pick. But Bryce Young, 22 for 31, 235 yards, 1 touchdown. Happy for him. Panthers, enjoy it because it might be the only win you get this season. But that'll do it for this week. What a week, Jurg. A lot of stuff to talk about, and I don't want to even imagine how long this episode would have been with Dame here because we might have gone 2 hours.
I think we'd still be on the baseball portion. Probably.
So yeah, that'll do it for this week. Jurg, where can you find us on the socials?
Guys, you already know, if you want more fantastic content from us, follow us at somewhat.sports to get all the latest weekly predictions that we put. And of course, as Chris mentioned, it should be up around this time, our NBA standings predictions going into the season that I'm sure we're going to talk more about as we go further here into the NBA season. And of course, if you want to get and listen to this fantastic podcast that you're already listening to, we do appreciate that. Continue to follow us on YouTube and Spotify, Somewhat Space and Sports on both of those platforms. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the notification bell so you get notified when the videos are up, unless YouTube just screws you over with that, which they love to do half the time. Really depends on the time of day and how they're feeling. And then when it comes to Spotify, please follow us, give us 5 stars, leave a review, let us know what you want, what you love. This podcast, man, 3 years old. It's fantastic. This podcast was made by 3 people, but for the people, guys. We love talking sports. We love having fun. We just love, having episodes like this. The lazy river carried us, Chris, and I think it carried us to a glorious episode here as we enter the last couple months of 2023.
Beautifully put as always, Jurg. Beautifully put as always. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate you. And until next time, peace.